True Romance is my favorite screenplay ever written. I think it's a masterclass in character-driven plotting. Unlike a lot of films where secondary characters with interchangeable lines often serve as simple background or plot devices, each thread is essential to the narrative. Every single character, no matter how small their role may seem, is integral to the story's progression. Remove just one, and the entire plot would unravel and morph into something entirely different. Every character feels like they could be the star of their own story because Quentin Tarantino's writing gives each one such a distinct personality, backstory, and motivation that everyone stands out in their own right. The characters don't just populate the world of True Romance, they shape it. True Romance, directed by Tony Scott and written by Quentin Tarantino, was released on September 10, 1993. The film follows Clarence, a lonely comic book store clerk in Detroit, who falls in love with Alabama, a call girl. After they marry, Clarence kills Alabama's pimp and accidentally takes a suitcase of cocaine. The couple plans to sell the drugs to a Hollywood producer to start a new life, but their scheme spirals into chaos. Both the mob and the LAPD pursue them, leading to a violent showdown in a hotel suite between multiple parties. True Romance was one of Tarantino's first screenplays. It was originally written in a non-linear structure until Scott made significant changes. He reordered the scenes in chronological order and altered the ending. In Tarantino's original version, Clarence dies in the final shootout, leaving Alabama to escape on her own. Scott, however, chose to give the film a more hopeful conclusion, where both Clarence and Alabama survive, as Scott felt that his two lead characters deserved a happily ever after. It's a film that transcends its pulp origins to become something more profound. A love letter to the dreamers and misfits who believe in love so fiercely that they're willing to burn the world down for it. The aspect of the writing that I love the most is how it showcases the butterfly effect in screenplay form. It's a chain reaction of character choices, where the actions of even the smallest characters ripple through the narrative, affecting the outcome in significant ways. There's beauty and craft in how it connects its characters through a series of cause and effect relationships. There's a symbiotic relationship between plot and character. The story isn't something that happens to these characters, it's something they create through their choices. This is why removing any character, no matter how minor they seem, would fundamentally alter the story. From the smallest role to the leads, everyone is a piece of a larger puzzle. Tarantino's screenplay ensures that no one is wasted, no scene is superfluous, and every moment counts. To fashion a narrative where the loss of any single character would cause the entire edifice to collapse is a real testament to the screenplay's brilliance. Every action has a purpose. The plot is not just about what happens next, but about why it happens and who makes it happen. To outline how each character shapes the course of the plot by their actions and their behavior, we begin with Lance, Clarence's comic book store boss, who isn't ever seen on screen. He's the one who hires a call girl for Clarence's birthday present. Had he bought him a more conventional birthday present, the story would never have even gotten started. After Clarence and Alabama spend the night together, they declare mutual love and decide to get married. Their choices, often impulsive and driven by passion, lead them on a journey that could have taken very different paths had they made different decisions. The supporting characters they encounter along the way further influence their fates. Once married, Clarence learns about Alabama's past as a call girl. He decides to confront and kill her pimp in an attempt to free her from her past and assert his love, encouraged by his imaginary friend Elvis, played by Val Kilmer, and for legal reasons is credited as mentor. Had Elvis given him different guidance, then who knows? But Elvis is simply a figment of Clarence's psyche, and so the buck stops with himself. Clarence is driven by a mix of desperation and bravado. He is motivated by his desire to protect his wife and to reclaim her belongings. His willingness to confront Drexl reveals a different side of him. He is willing to confront extreme danger for the sake of proving to his wife that he will always protect her. That and the fact that he's somebody who probably watched Taxi Driver one too many times. Drexl is a white man who has adopted the persona of a black gangster, complete with dreadlocks, scars, and a penchant for extreme violence. Drexl is a volatile character, and his presence immediately establishes a sense of threat. Gary Oldman's portrayal of Drexl brings an unsettling intensity to the character. Drexl is a drug-dealing pimp with ties to the mob. He has a chaotic and violent personality, as we see earlier in the film when he kills a pair of drug dealers in a double-cross. His interactions with Clarence are initially marked by a sense of superiority and menace, as he feels secure in his control over the situation. He has already shown himself to the audience to be ruthless, opportunistic, and unhinged. Drexl is initially amused, at ease, and confident, toying with Clarence. Clarence is driven by love and a sense of justice, but is seen by Drexl as nothing more than a minor annoyance and is underestimated. This miscalculation leads to a violent altercation where Clarence shoots and kills Drexl and his associate in a frantic fight. The act of violence is significant because it represents his crossing of a moral line. Clarence shifts from being an ordinary man into a determined outlaw who is willing to kill to achieve his goals. Clarence's decision to confront Drexl isn't just a plot point, it is a reaction to Drexl's menacing persona. This encounter shapes the trajectory of the story. Drexl serves as the first major obstacle that Clarence and Alabama must overcome, and his actions have far-reaching consequences that influence the rest of the story. Without Drexl, Clarence wouldn't acquire the cocaine that propels the rest of the plot. Drexl isn't just a villain, he's a catalyst. His character is essential. Remove him, and Clarence and Alabama's flight from Detroit never happens. After killing Drexl, Clarence accidentally takes a suitcase filled with cocaine, thinking it contains Alabama's belongings. This mistake is what drives the entire plot forward. The cocaine becomes the central object that everyone, Clarence, Alabama, the Mafia, and the police, are chasing after. If Clarence had realized what was in the suitcase and left it behind, they would have avoided the ensuing mayhem. Without the cocaine, they wouldn't have had to deal with the Mafia or the police. Their journey might have been much simpler and less violent. Rather than disposing of the drugs or fleeing the country, Clarence decides to sell the cocaine to finance a new life with Alabama. However, Drexl's death puts Clarence and Alabama in the crosshairs of the Mafia because the cocaine that Clarence steals from Drexl belongs to the Mafia, and they are determined to retrieve it. Drexl's death and the theft of the cocaine ensure that Clarence and Alabama cannot simply run away and start a new life. Instead, they are pursued by dangerous enemies. Enemies who know their names because of a simple mistake. In the confusion that followed the shootout, Clarence forgot to pick up his driver's license from the scene, basically leaving his ID in a dead guy's hand. Clarence unknowingly leaves a trail that leads the mob straight to Clifford Worley. Clifford Worley, portrayed by Dennis Hopper, plays a brief but pivotal role. His character serves as a crucial component in the development of the story and in the survival of his son. Clifford is introduced as Clarence's estranged father. His relationship with Clarence is complicated and strained, primarily because Clifford was absent for much of Clarence's life. This absence suggests a failure in his paternal duties, creating a sense of distance and perhaps resentment between them. Despite this, there is an underlying respect and a latent bond between father and son, which becomes evident during their interactions. The Mafia, led by the ruthless Vincenzo Coccotti, played by Christopher Walken, tracks down Clifford in an attempt to find Clarence. In one of the most intense and memorable scenes of all time, Vincenzo interrogates Clifford, trying to extract information about his son's whereabouts. The so-called Sicilian scene in True Romance is perhaps the film's most iconic and memorable moment, showcasing intense dialogue, masterful acting, and an underlying sense of dread. Cliff, a former cop, knows that his son is in grave danger, but chooses to protect him. Vincenzo uses psychological manipulation, kindness mixed with acts of violence to get Clifford to talk. The conversation is brutal and fascinating. As Vincenzo pressures Clifford for information, Clifford realizes that his own life is likely over. Understanding this, he makes a conscious decision to provoke Vincenzo, essentially opting for a quick death over prolonged torture. To do this, Clifford tells Vincenzo a story about Sicilian ancestry, suggesting that the Moors who invaded Sicily in the Middle Ages altered the entire bloodline of Sicilians. Vincenzo, though initially amused by Clifford's story, eventually becomes enraged by the implication that his Sicilian heritage carries Moorish blood. Clifford knows that he's in a powerless position, but he uses the only weapon he has left, his words. His story is not only a historical insult to Vincenzo, but a final act of defiance. Clifford robs Vincenzo of control by forcing him to react emotionally, which directly leads to Vincenzo's decision to shoot Clifford point blank rather than continue the interrogation. Vincenzo begins the interrogation by telling Clifford he can always tell when a person is lying, no matter how well they try to conceal it. So, once Clifford completes his provocative monologue, he asks, "If that's a fact, tell me, am I lying?" Dennis Hopper and Christopher Walken's performances in this scene are sublime. Hopper plays Clifford with a quiet dignity and resignation, while Walken exudes a chilling mix of charm and menace. The chemistry between the two actors transcends the dialogue, and Scott's camera lens elevates the scene into something extraordinary. Hopper's delivery of the history lesson, with its mocking tone, gives Clifford a sense of triumph, even in death. Walken's reaction, gradually shifting from amusement to cold-blooded rage, adds layers to his character, revealing the dangerous volatility behind his calm exterior. Faced with the threat of torture and death, Clifford makes a conscious decision to protect his son. He understands the gravity of the situation and realizes that by withholding information, he might save Clarence's life, even at the cost of his own. And by provoking a quick death as opposed to prolonged torture, he knows that he won't be compelled to cooperate. Clifford's method of resistance is both cunning and sacrificial. By choosing to protect Clarence in this final moment, Clifford redeems himself from his past failures as a father. He sacrifices his life to ensure that the Mafia is misled. His death is both tragic and heroic. Clifford's character arc is one of redemption. Despite being an absent father for much of Clarence's life, his final act is one of pure selflessness. In the end, Clifford fulfills his paternal role by doing the one thing that truly matters, protecting his son when it counts the most. Unfortunately, a note in Clifford's trailer lets the gangsters know that the newlyweds are heading to their friend Dick Ritchie's home in L.A. Dick Ritchie, played by Michael Rapaport, is an aspiring actor and a friend of Clarence. He's trying to make it in Hollywood, and throughout the film, he is focused on landing a role in a T.J. Hooker TV pilot. Dick is loyal to Clarence and agrees to help him sell the stolen cocaine, despite the risks involved. We also meet Floyd, played by Brad Pitt. He is Dick Ritchie's stoner roommate. He spends most of his time lounging on the couch smoking pot, and generally being oblivious to the dangerous situations unfolding around him. Dick then introduces Clarence in Alabama to Elliot Blitzer, played by Bronson Pinchot. Elliot is an aspiring actor and a Hollywood assistant working for Lee Donowitz, a successful film producer. He is tasked with facilitating the cocaine deal that Clarence and Alabama are trying to arrange. Elliot is depicted as somewhat spineless and easily influenced, eager to please those around him, especially his boss. His nervous demeanor and desire to fit in with the Hollywood crowd make him a vulnerable character, easily manipulated by both Clarence's group and the police. His personality, though initially appearing to be somewhat comedic and harmless, becomes crucial in escalating the tension and driving the plot towards its conclusion. Elliot is supposed to be the middleman who helps facilitate the drug deal. Elliot initially agrees to help Clarence and Alabama meet with Lee Donowitz. His decision to be involved in the deal, despite his nervousness and lack of experience in criminal activities, sets the stage for the eventual meet finale. This meeting is crucial, as it brings all the key players together. Elliot takes it upon himself to ask for a sample bag of cocaine so that he can spend his afternoons speeding around Hollywood with a female companion. Elliot is pulled over for driving fast. The police find cocaine, on his person, so to speak, which leads to his arrest. Terrified and desperate, Elliot agrees to cooperate with the police due to his desperation to avoid jail time. He agrees to wear a wire during the drug deal between Clarence and Lee Donowitz. This decision by Elliot significantly shifts the dynamics of the plot. Without Elliot's fear and poor decision-making, there's no police involvement, and the final act wouldn't play out the way that it does. Elliot's decision to betray Clarence by working with the police introduces a new layer to the story. His cooperation with the authorities turns what was supposed to be a simple drug deal into a high-stakes sting operation. This betrayal heightens the danger for all involved, as it ensures that the police will be present at the meeting. The combination of Clarence's group, Lee Donowitz's gun-toting entourage, the mafia, and the police in one room later creates an explosive situation. The police presence, due to Elliot's cooperation, triggers a bloody shootout that results in multiple deaths and injuries, including Elliot's own. Elliot embodies the themes of fear and survival. Unlike Clarence, who is driven by love and a sense of adventure, Elliot is motivated by self-preservation. His lack of backbone and susceptibility to pressure reflect a character who is not inherently evil or malicious. He's simply a weak person caught up in a situation far beyond his control. His decisions, forged from panic, have catastrophic consequences. Back to Floyd. Despite his lack of active involvement in the central plot, Floyd's actions, or inactions, also play a critical role in shaping the story's events. Floyd's role is minimal, but his careless decision to divulge Clarence and Alabama's whereabouts to the mob is crucial. Floyd is completely unaware of the danger Clarence and Alabama are in. When Virgil, brought to life most excellently by James Gandolfini, comes looking for Clarence, Floyd casually tells him that Clarence and Alabama have gone to the Safari Inn Motel. This decision matters because it leads Virgil directly to finding Alabama by herself. When Virgil confronts Alabama alone, he asks for the cocaine. And when he doesn't like the evasive answers he's given, he brutally beats her into a near unconscious state. When Virgil discovers the cocaine under the bed, it is finally in his possession. No doubt his next action would have been to kill her, and then wait for Clarence to return to the room and then kill him too. But his immediate decision to gloat and sadistically play with his prey allows Alabama a desperate last-gasp chance to fight for survival. Using makeshift weapons at her disposal, it's a fight that she wins against the odds. Had Virgil simply carried out the job he was sent to do, the story would have ended right there. Well, not only does Floyd's drug-induced lack of short-term memory means that he fails to tell his friends that people are looking for them, but later, following Virgil's death, when the rest of the mafia crew come knocking, Floyd tells them that Clarence and Alabama have gone to the Beverly Ambassador. Now, if Floyd had been more cautious, or simply too stoned to remember, he might not have revealed Clarence and Alabama's location. The mafia might have struggled to find them in time, possibly altering the course of the plot and the subsequent shootout with the police, even in ways that may have even prevented Clarence and Alabama's eventual escape. The two cops who convince Elliot to wear a wire are Nicholson and Dimes, two LAPD detectives involved in the sting operation that unfolds during the climactic hotel drug deal. Their roles are critical in escalating the film's final sequence into a messy, doomed showdown. Nicholson, played by Chris Penn, and Dimes, played by Tom Sizemore, are partners who have been tracking Clarence in Alabama after learning about the volume of stolen drugs from Elliot. The two detectives display a laid-back, even enthusiastic attitude toward the situation. Both detectives are amused and excited about the upcoming drug bust, adding an almost darkly comedic element to their scenes. This is particularly evident in the initial build-up as they exchange banter and take pleasure in listening to Elliot's wiretap as he nervously unravels. As for Lee Donowitz's involvement in the drug deal is the final piece that brings all the storylines together in a Mexican standoff. When Lee discovers that Elliot is working with the police, he emotionally throws scalding coffee over his face, leading to the police firing the first shot, leading to the all-out every-man-for-himself carnage. During this final act at the hotel, Nicholson and Dimes serve as the law enforcement element in a three-way standoff between Clarence's group, the mobsters sent by Big Boss Blue Lou Boyle, and Lee Donowitz's entourage of bodyguards. Their undercover operation is intended to bust the drug deal, but as tensions rise between the various parties, their presence adds another extreme layer to the situation. Once the violence erupts, Nicholson and Dimes are caught in the crossfire, contributing to the explosive finale that leaves most of the characters laying dead or wounded as cocaine and feathers from the bullet-riddled sofa rain down upon them as the drug deal turns into a massacre. The film's final set piece is ultimately shaped by the cumulative effect of Clarence and Alabama's decisions. Clarence is wounded, and many characters are killed, but Alabama manages to escape with Clarence and the money from the drug deal. If Clarence and Alabama had made different choices, such as not confronting Drexl or avoiding the drug deal, the ending to this tale would have been drastically different. They might have escaped the criminal world entirely, or met their demise earlier in the story. Likewise, the story could have been a quiet resolution of their love story, a tragic ending with their deaths, or a clean getaway without any violence. But in the end, once the first domino is toppled, every decision made by every character, whether out of love, desperation, ignorance, greed, fear, or vengeance, shapes the story. Had any character chosen differently, from Clarence's impulsive love for Alabama to Drexl's fatal arrogance, the outcomes would have diverged quite drastically. Had Clifford chosen to betray his son, Clarence's fate could have been sealed long before the final showdown. Had Alabama hesitated to trust Clarence, or chosen not to follow him into a life of crime, their love story would have remained just a fleeting moment in time. Had Elliot not caved to fear and worn the wire, the drug deal might have gone off without a hitch, avoiding the blood-drenched battle with the police. Had Dick refused to help Clarence sell the drugs, the couple might have found themselves without an ally in Los Angeles, changing the course of their escape. Had Floyd kept his mouth shut when the mobsters came knocking, Clarence and Alabama might have avoided the climactic hotel ambush altogether. Like I said, it's my favorite screenplay. I like it. Always have, always will. Thanks for watching.